Very good morning to one and all. At first, I pay my tribute to the founder president of Sri Shivaji Education Society, Honorable Dr. Bhau Sahib alias Punjabrao Deshmukh. Dear participants, myself Dr. Ashwin Gopilal Lunge, Head and Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, Sri R.R. Lahoti Science College, Morshi, welcome you all in the two-day National E-Conference on topic Interdisciplinary Recent Research Trends. I heartily welcome President of Sri Shivaji Education Society and Chief Patron of this E-Conference, Honorable Shri Harshavardhanji Deshmukh Sahib. I welcome Principal of this college and Chairman of this E-Conference, Honorable Dr. G.R. Tadas sir. I also welcome Convener of this conference and IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Kalpana Pawar Madam. I also welcome coordinators of this conference, Dr. P.M. Dahikar Madam, Dr. G.C. Kamde sir, Mr. G.P. Hade sir, and Organizing Secretary Dr. R.S. Dhande sir. I also welcome Mr. N.D. Kodekar sir, Technical Head of this conference, and all the committee members. Dear participants, I am sure you enjoyed yesterday's session. Now we are in the second day of conference. Today we have two sessions. First session is dedicated for life sciences and second for chemical sciences. Today we have two speakers. I heartily welcome both the speakers of this conference. For the first session, we have resource person Honorable Dr. Nitin Dongarwar sir, Head and Associate Professor, Department of Botany, Rashtrasanta Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur. Now I invite Miss Vijaya Chauhan Madam to give the brief introduction of our first speaker. Thank you.
Everyone, and welcome for today's session. My name is Vijaya Chauhan and I am working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Botany. Today I am profusely overjoyed to take this opportunity to introduce our today's resource person, Dr. Nitin Dongarwar sir. Actually, our today's resource person is a well-known personality and he merely requires any introduction. He is Head and Associate Professor at Nagpur University in the Department of Botany. He did his MSc in 1993. He also holds the PhD degree which he has completed in 1998. He has total 23 years of teaching experience and 20 years of research experience. He has qualified CSIR NET and SET examination in 1995. He is well known to work in different fields of botany like taxonomy and ethnobotany. He has also guided 8 students for PhD and 5 students for MPhil. He has also published 51 research papers in different national and international journals. Besides this, he has also completed 4 conservation projects. So now I request Dr. Dongarwar sir to please start today's session. Thank you.
First of all, I am thankful to the organizers for giving me a chance to interact with the participants. I am also thankful to Dr. Ravi Dhande for inviting me to deliver a talk. The topic of my talk today is Habenarias. Orchids are considered to be one of the most beautiful flowers. They are the most beautiful flowers, they are the most patient flowers, and they are the most intelligent flowers. Patient because every orchid flower has got its own specific pollinator and they will wait for the proper pollinator to come and pollinate it. The family Orchidaceae is one of the largest family of the flowering plants. and it is represented by 22,500 accepted species. Out of these 22,500 accepted species, 1,300 species of orchids are found in India. And in Maharashtra, the family Orchidaceae is represented by 110 species, which are distributed in 34 genera. According to the IUCN's Red List, there are 1,821 orchid species which are included into the threatened category. The orchids grow in a specific undisturbed microclimate, and due to habitat destruction and overexploitation, the species are declining at a faster rate since the start of the 20th century. The orchids are excellent indicators of overall biodiversity because of specific pollinator for pollination, and they require specific relationship with the fungus for the germination. Because of their diversity, threats from over collection and habitat loss, they are critical group in the conservation. The Habenaria is commonly called as bog orchid. It is native to every continent except Antarctica in both tropical and subtropical and parts of the world, as well as the temperate parts of the world. The Habenaria genera is one of the largest genera of the orchids in the world, and this genus includes 2,381 species. In India, Habenaria is represented by 58 species and 3 varieties: Habenaria foliosa variety foliosa, Habenaria foliosa variety foetida, Habenaria foliosa variety gibsoni, and 26 species of Habenaria are endemic to India. It is found throughout in India except Haryana, Delhi, Tripura, Lakshadweep, and Nicobar Islands. The Habenarias grow maximum species of Habenarias, they are found between 1000 to 2000 meters above the sea level, and only 4 species of Habenaria are there which are found up above 3900 meters above the sea level. Though Habenaria is one of the largest genera of the orchids in the world, but in India, Bulbophyllum is the largest genera, which is represented by 105 species, followed by Dendrobium, which is represented by 103 species, Habenaria by 59 species, Aeria by 54 species, and Oberonia is represented by 52 species. As far as distribution of Habenaria in the Indian subcontinent is concerned, in Sri Lanka, 10 species of Habenaria are found, out of which 6 are common in India. Pakistan has got 10 species of Habenaria, all of them are found in India. Bangladesh is represented by 9 species of Habenaria, of which 3 are found in India or common in India. Nepal, 18 species of Habenaria are found, and all of them are common in India. In China, 54 species of Habenaria are found, out of which 14 are common in India. All the 13 species which are found in Bhutan, they are common in India. In Myanmar, 40 species of Habenaria are found, out of which 11 are common in India. These are some species of Habenarias like Habenaria burlini, Habenaria clavata, Habenaria crinifera. Habenaria crinifera is an epiphytic species. Mostly the species of Habenarias, they are terrestrial species. Few species, they are lithophytic species because they require specific environment. They require specific soil where the nutrients which are leaching out from the rocks, they are required for the growth. And this species of Habenaria, that is Habenaria crinifera, is an epiphytic species. We have collected it from Amba region of Kolhapur district. This is Habenaria dentata. This is Habenaria digitata. Habenaria diphylla. The name indicates that it has got only 2 leaves, so the name Habenaria diphylla. This is a grassland where you can see white colored flowers of Habenaria grandifloriformis are seen. This is a close-up of Habenaria grandifloriformis. This is another close-up of Habenaria grandifloriformis. This is toothbrush orchid, Habenaria hainiana. It is very common in the Western Ghats. Here you can see a grassland where the toothbrush orchid or Habenaria hainiana is growing. This is Habenaria longicornu, which is found in the Karnataka region. This is a grassland where Habenaria longicorniculata is seen growing. This is a close-up of Habenaria longicorniculata flower, and here you can see a long spur is there. So any insect which has got a long proboscis will be able to pollinate this flower. This is Habenaria marginata. This is Habenaria medusae. The name medusae has been given from Greek goddess Medusa. This is Habenaria multicordata. This is Habenaria plantaginea. This is Habenaria radiata or egret orchid. Because the shape of the flower, it resembles to that of a bird, egret. So it is called as egret orchid. You can see here Habenaria radiata. This is the lithophytic orchid, Habenaria rariflora. There are few species of Habenaria like Habenaria rariflora and Habenaria punchganensis. They require the lithophytic habitat where the minerals from the lithophytic rocks are enriching the soil, and these minerals are required for the growth of the plant. This is a close-up of Habenaria rariflora. This is Habenaria regeneri, pink colored Habenaria, but it is not found in India. This is Habenaria rhodocilli, which is very common in Malaysia, Thailand and adjoining area. It comes in 2 colors, yellow and orange color. Now, most of the species of Habenarias, they are found in the areas where good rainfall is there and the temperature is never very high. But the Vidarbha region of Maharashtra has got high temperature. That's why very few species of Habenarias are found in Vidarbha region. So when we started working on Habenarias, we have collected large number of species of Habenarias. We brought these species to our locality. We planted them in some small pots, or also we have planted them in the terrestrial habitat. And for establishing these plants, we have initially we used polyhouses, and there these plants grew in the next season. Now every orchid species has got a specific pollinator, and for pollination it requires a specific pollinator. So when we bought these plants to our locality, automatically no pollinator was available in the locality. So we started doing artificial pollination experiments in order to set the fruits. Then we also worked on in vitro multiplication of some of the orchid species, especially some species of Habenaria. And we have also worked on eco-restoration of one critically endangered orchid species. I will come to it later on. Now, in Orchidaceae or in the orchids, basically the pollen grain, the pollens are compound pollen. They are pollinia. And mostly the pollinia are covered by the anther cap. Unless and until this pollen cap is removed, the pollinia are not visible. And the pollinia are very small. Here you can see on the tip of the pencil, the pollinia can stand. And these pollinia, they are very sticky, so that they will adhere easily to the stigma. Here you can see some of the photographs where moths and butterflies, they are pollinating. Since majority of the Habenaria species, they are white in color, but most of them are fragrant. And when they are white in color, they usually open during the time, and they remain open for at least 15 days. And during the daytime, the butterflies visit, and during the night time, the moths visit for collecting the nectar. And here you can see a moth is visiting the species of Habenaria, and it is doing the pollination. Here also you can see another species of moth which is pollinating. In another photograph here you can see that this moth is pollinating the species of Habenaria, and in this close-up photograph you can see that these pollinia has probably stuck to the proboscis of the insect, and when this insect carrying the pollinia visits the next Habenaria species, unknowingly it will transfer the pollinia on the receptive stigma. So in this way the pollination of the orchids, especially the Habenaria species, is going on in the nature. Here you can see that during the daytime a butterfly is pollinating the Habenaria foliosa flower. Now most of the time when we started doing conservation practices on Habenarias, we have seen that in certain areas the pollinators were present, in some areas the pollinators were not present. So we started pollination biology experiments. So what we did, we started doing artificial pollination on the plants of Habenaria, and here you can see my student is doing artificial pollination on Habenaria roxburghi. Here she is doing artificial pollination experiment on Habenaria marginata. Now when we started doing artificial pollination experiments, we did certain experiments in such a way that we have marked some of the flowers in such a way that we have marked them, some of the flowers were kept as it is, they were kept unpollinated by us. We measured the number of flowers per spike, and number of plants we have tagged them, and we left them in nature so that some natural pollinator can come and pollinate it. And to some plants we have performed artificial pollination experiments. So in this here you can see that the red color shows artificial pollination and the blue colored shows natural pollination, or pollination which is taking place in the nature. Almost everywhere the success rate was same. So we performed artificial pollination experiments in Habenaria comilinifolia, Habenaria roxburghi, Habenaria ovalifolia, Habenaria marginata, Habenaria foliosa, and Habenaria persifera. Besides, we have also performed artificial pollination experiments on other species of orchids also. And if we could get success, that sometimes we got better result than the natural pollination, sometimes we got less results than the natural pollination. We have marked the flowers, and after the pollination, if the fruit set is there, because we have covered them in the nature so that nobody else is doing the pollination, that if we have done artificial pollination and if the fruit set is there, that is the success of the pollination. This is the plant on which we have worked for eco-restoration. This is Habenaria punchganensis. Here you can see it grows in the lithophytic habitat, mostly on the tabletops of the Sahyadri, which are a part of Western Ghats in Maharashtra. And this species of Habenaria grows in the lithophytic habitat only. The Habenaria punchganensis, which is commonly called as Pachgani Amri, is a terrestrial orchid endemic to Western Ghats of Maharashtra, and it is found in the lateritic plateaus or similar habitats of Western Ghats. Due to the habitat destruction, overgrazing, trampling, tourism, there is decrease in the quality of habitat, as a result of which the population of the taxa has declined. And this taxa has been declared as critically endangered by the IUCN's Red List. So we started working on the population of Habenaria punchganensis. We have worked from Mumbai to Sindhudurg district in the Western Ghat region, where this plant is growing well. This is the photograph of Karst plateau, where the Habenaria punzganensis is also growing. These are some of the lateritic plateaus where the Habenaria punzganensis is growing. This is another lateritic plateau in Sindhudurg district. Here you can see that Habenaria punzganensis is growing. This is a Chaukud plateau in the Sindhudurg district where we got the maximum population of Habenaria punzganensis. So when we started doing the plant survey, we did survey in 5 districts of Maharashtra: Satara, Sindhudurg, Kolhapur, Ahmednagar and Raigad district. And the area which we screened was Karst plateau, Pachgani, Mahabaleshwar in Satara, in Sindhudurg, Amboli region, in Kolhapur, Morzai plateau, in Ahmednagar, which is the highest peak of Maharashtra, Kalsubai, in Raigad, Matheran district. So we have screened total 41 sites. Out of these 41 sites, we could get in 10 sites the population of Habenaria punzganensis. Then, in order to study the population of the Habenaria punzganensis, it was not possible for us to go to all the places every time. So we minimized the number of sites to 3, where we could got the maximum population: Chaukud plateau, Kalsubai and Morzai. Then we started doing the how many plants are germinating, how many of them are growing to the juvenile stage, how many of them are growing to the flowering stage, how many are reaching to the fruiting stage, and how many are reaching to the senescing stage. Because every time these plants are subjected to threats from several, there is trampling, then there is overgrazing, due to which large number of herbivores are there. There is every possibility that these herbivores, they will eat the Habenaria species. Season wise also, month wise also, we went to these areas and located the Habenaria species, and then we started calculating how many species are surviving: June, July, August, September and October. This is a plateau of Pachgani area, where you can see that large number of other species are also growing, especially the utricularias are there. These are some of the associated species like Habenaria haeniana, Eriocolon, Dipcardi, Pogostemon, then another species of Eriocolon, then other species like Senecio, Pinda, Smithia, Balsams. They are the associated species which are found growing in the lithophytic habitat. Here you can see this is the Pachgani plateau and this is the Karst. Now here you can see when the Karst is famous for wildflowers, and when the area blooms, large number of visitors they visit, and due to the trampling and due to the overcrowding of the visitors, some of the habitats where these plants are growing, they are damaged by the tourists. Here you can see grazing is very common. When the tourists are there, automatically a large number of attracting animals are also there. The horse riding is also there, and these horses, they also feed on the grasses, and while feeding they are feeding on the Habenarias also. So large number of species of Habenaria, large number of individuals of Habenarias are being eaten by the herbivore animals. So when we started doing experiments on this plant, we performed artificial pollination experiments on Habenaria punzganensis at 2 places. The plants which we bought in Nagpur, they were potted in the polyhouse, they were grown in the earthen pots, and next year when they flowered, the experiments were conducted. and some permanent plots were also laid at Karsubai, where we performed self-pollination experiments and cross-pollination experiments. Irrespective of pollination type, whether it is self-pollination or cross-pollination, the success rate was almost 75% to 76%. So we got success rate at Karsubai as well as in Nagpur. Then the orchid species, for germination, they require a specific mycorrhizal fungi. Unless and until the mycorrhizal fungi infects the seed will not germinate at all. The reason is that the orchid seeds are prematurely dispersed. When they are dispersed, the embryo is underdeveloped. Probably the embryo growth takes place up to the globular stage, and the seeds are produced in huge quantity. Almost a single capsule contains thousands of seeds. And these seeds are liberated, they are carried by the wind when they fall down. And if the seeds are infected by the typical mycorrhizal fungi, in the initial part of the relationship, the mycorrhizal fungi will provide nutrition to the seed. Then the further development of the embryo will take place, and the embryo will grow proper, and then the seed will germinate. So that takes place. But for ex situ conservation, we started doing tissue culture experiments, but these seeds are coated with some coating due to which they are impervious to water. So the water will not enter into the seed. So that's why it is very much necessary to remove that coating. So here we have used sodium hypochlorite solution to remove that coating. And we have given various treatments, 5%, 10%, 15%, 20% treatment of sodium hypochlorite was given, and the time of treatment was 5, 10 and 15 minutes and 20 minutes. We could get the best germination percentage at 5% sodium hypochlorite solution when the seeds were treated for 15 minutes, where we could get 80% viability was there. One more thing is there, that the seeds, they also undergo dormancy, and in order to break the dormancy, it is very much necessary that we should treat the seeds with sodium hypochlorite to break their dormancy. The seeds are very minute. Here you can see the microscopic photograph of the seed, and these are the seeds which are turned red. It means that if we are giving the treatment of TTC to the seed, those seeds which are viable, they will turn red, and the non-viable seed will not turn red. So in this way we can determine that how many seeds are viable and how many seeds are non-viable. Then for asymbiotic seed germination, we have used different media. We have used 6 media: Vasenvent, Knudsen C, BM1, LN, MM1 and half MS media. And here you can see that germination percentage is variable. The maximum germination percentage was observed in MM media, that was 57%, and which was followed by BM1 medium, which is 55%. Then for further development of the seed and further germination of the seed, we have used BM1 media, because when we tried all the 6 media, we could get different types of germination percentage, but the further development of the seedling, the best medium was observed was BM1 medium. So we took BM1 media for further development, and we have used 2 types of cytokinins, BA and kinetin, and we have used variable concentration, 1 milligram per liter, 2 milligram per liter and 3 milligram per liter. And in the 3 milligram per liter concentration of PA, we could get maximum germination in the suspension culture. One thing I should mention here, that the orchid seeds, they require long time for germination, on the solid media, sometimes 45 days, sometimes 60 days, sometimes 90 days also were required for germination. But when we are using the suspension culture for growing the seeds or for germinating the seeds, comparatively the seeds will germinate faster in the suspension culture media. Here you can see that the different stages of germinating seeds here. Here you can see that the seeds have started swelling. Then the seeds were then placed on a solid media. Then the seedling they started growing. These are again further developmental stages of Habenaria punzganensis. Since Habenaria punzganensis is a terrestrial orchid, the corm develops first, and unless and until the corm develops, the plant will not grow further. So for developing a better quality of corm, we used different concentration of sucrose so that we can get the better quality of plants. So the tissue cultured plants, they were hardened and then they were transferred in the polyhouses. But since the plant is a terrestrial orchid, Habenaria punzganensis is a terrestrial orchid, we thought that why can't we grow the corm by giving different concentration of sucrose. So we used a different concentration of sucrose to increase the size of the corm, and same corm, if it is planted in the soil, then in the next year the seedlings will come, the plantlets will come. So in this way we can also avoid the what we can say, hardening of the plant. Here you can see that the successive stages of the development of the plant, and here also you can see that the different stages of development. So by using different concentration of sucrose, we could attain good quality of corms there. Once these corms were collected, we took these corms and then we marked one plot in the Kadsubai region, which was a permanent plot, and we have selected such a plant area where no other species of Habenaria or no other individuals of Habenaria are growing. So we selected such a site and we planted our plants there. So in the next season, if at all the individuals of Habenaria are coming, all these individuals of Habenaria would be those Habenarias which we have raised to tissue culture and which we have planted there. So in the next season when we went there, we could see that all of the corms which we planted in the previous year, they germinated and the new plants, they were growing there. These are my colleagues who all the time helped me in collection of the different species of Habenarias. She is my student Dr. Uma Thakur, who has done the tissue culture experiments on the different species of Habenarias. He is Ankush Kayarkar now. Right now he is working on Mycobiota associated with Habenaria. And she is Ms. Rituparna Dasgupta. She is also working on Mycobiota associated with Geodorum densiflorum and Eulofia nuda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for this informative session. Now I invite Dr. A.S. Tekal Madam for vote of thanks.
Good afternoon to everyone. It is my privilege to take a word of thanks on behalf of Sri R.R. Lahoti Science College, Morshi, who has directly and indirectly contributed this e-conference named as Interdisciplinary Recent Research Trends since last 2 days. First of all, I may like to express our sincere thanks to our Chief Patron, Honorable Shri Harshvardhanji Deshmukh Sir, President of Shri Shivaji Education Society, for giving us your valuable time and gracing this occasion. It means a lot to us. I think the content of any conference depends on the quality of the speaker that we can put together. I would like to express our profound gratitude to our resource person, Mr. Nitin Dongarkar sir, for making this seminar interesting and meaningful. We are really enlightened with your knowledge about the topic. I would like to extend our thanks to Honorable Principal Dr. G.R. Tadas sir, who continues to inspire us to work with enthusiasm and dedication. I would like to take a moment to thank our IQSC coordinator Dr. Kalpana Pawar ma'am, who worked really very hard for this event and she has been helpful throughout. An event like this cannot happen overnight, so I fell in my duty if I don't mention my HODs and all staff for their enormous cooperation and help in conceptualizing the whole conference, as well as the technical support in the event. And last but not the least, all the wonderful participants who have turned up in such a great numbers. I hope this conference is fruitful to you all. A very big thank you to each and everyone who are making this event a grand success. Thank you.
Dear participants, for the second session, we have speaker, respected Dr. S.B. Maske sir. So now I invite Dr. V.T. Humne sir to give brief introduction of Dr. S.B. Maske sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lunge sir. Honorable President of Shri Shivaji Education Society, Shri Deshmukh sir, and respected Principal of Shri R.R. Lahoti Science College, Dr. Tadas sir. Today's our guest is Dr. S.B. Maske sir. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Maske sir. Presently, he is working as a Principal Scientist in Organic Chemistry Division at CSR National Chemical Laboratory, Pune. He had MSc from Pune University and PhD from National Chemical Laboratory. After his PhD, he moved for postdoctoral study to Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, USA, and Y State University, USA. He was a recipient of reputed Humboldt Fellowship at University of Hanover, Germany, and Ramanujan Fellow Scientist at CSR National Chemical Laboratory, Pune. He started his independent career as a senior scientist at CSR National Chemical Laboratory, Pune. His main research interest is to develop a new method for bioactive molecules using N-heterocyclic chemistry and CH activation. By using this method, he has successfully developed various complex natural products. He is also coordinator of various drug development programs run by government and pharmaceutical industry. Additionally, 7 students are completed PhD under his guidance and 5 students are currently working. More than 50 international publications and 12 patents in his credit, which having 1500 citation till 2020. So I invited and welcome a dynamic personality, Dr. S.B. Maske sir, and I request him to share their research knowledge to us. Please welcome sir.
A very good morning to all of you. This is Santosh Maske from CSIR National Chemical Laboratory, Pune, which is popularly known as NCL. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Dr. Tadas, Principal Shri R.R. Lahoti Science College, Morshi, for arranging such a nice event and for inviting me to present in front of you. I would also like to thank Dr. Kalpana Pawar for coordinating and Dr. Vivek Humne for bringing us together. Actually, I wanted to include my video while presenting, however, I could not do that, hence I have included my photograph on the first slide. I will introduce myself briefly. Basically, I am from Ahmednagar district. I completed my graduation from City Borough College, Shirur, and post-graduation from Abasaheb Garware College, Pune. Thereafter, I joined as a project fellow at National Chemical Laboratory and worked for 2 years, during which I could qualify CSIR NET exam and joined for PhD in the division of organic chemistry. Then completed the PhD in the year 2005 and moved on to United States for postdoctoral research. There I worked in 2 different cities for 2 years, and then I moved on to Germany as I was selected as a Humboldt Fellow. In Germany also I worked for 2 years, and in the year 2010 I was selected as a Ramanujan Fellow. With that fellowship I came back to India and joined NCL, and in the year 2013 I joined as a senior scientist, and in the year 2017 I was promoted to as a principal scientist and associate professor of ACSIR. In my group, we work on the development of fossil synthetic methods and their application in the synthesis of natural products as well as drugs. We also generate new chemical entities which are useful in biology or in the development of advanced materials. Till date, 7 students have completed PhD from my group. They are either postdoc or working in some colleges and universities. We have published more than 50 papers in very high impact journals and few patents. If you would like to know more about the projects that we have completed and the funding that we have availed for supporting our research group, please visit our homepage, which is given on this first slide. So today I am going to talk about natural product and drug synthesis by using CH activation. The title looks very complicated, but I am sure I will be able to simplify it during my presentation. As you all know, organic chemistry is about making and breaking of new bonds. And for that purpose, we use several different transformations such as oxidation, reduction, coupling, amidation, or several different rearrangements such as Beckmann rearrangement and so on. However, some of the transformations are so general and so facile that we can utilize it in the synthesis of complex natural products or drugs, and this kind of transformation itself forms a different area in organic chemistry, and this becomes as a popular synthetic tools in organic chemistry. I have listed few of them here, such as CH activation, organocatalysis, N-heterocyclic carbene, arine chemistry, enzymatic transformations, and so on. So basically in CH activation, what we do is we activate the bond, CH bond, and functionalize it using a transition metal catalyst. Same thing can be done in aliphatic system as well. In the area of organocatalysis, what we do is we use a simple organic molecule which catalyze the reaction to get the desired transformation. The N-heterocyclic carbene area is also a type of organocatalysis wherein this carbene which is generated in situ in the reaction is used as a catalyst, and the interesting transformation here is we are changing the reactivity of the substrate, which is called as umpolon. So the aldehyde, which is supposed to be electrophilic, it becomes a nucleophile and reacts with the electrophilic substrate. The area of arine chemistry and benzene chemistry is also very popular nowadays, and the substrate TMS triplet is commonly used to get the arine, which contains a triple bond which is highly electrophilic, and this electrophilic species has been used tremendously in several transformations. The other area or the other synthetic tool which is present in the toolbox of organic chemist is the enzymatic transformations, and this is getting very popular nowadays as the side products are minimized and it is helpful for the environment. So there are many other tools such as metathesis, that means cross metathesis, zeolites, cross coupling reactions, and so on. However, we work in these 5 areas and we utilize them for the synthesis of natural products as well as drug. But today I am going to talk about only CH activation, as I said. But before that, we should understand the difference between the three terminologies. What is CH bond functionalization, what is cross coupling reaction, and what is CH bond activation. As you can see in the CH bond functionalization, the breaking of CH bond takes place by initial electrophilic attack on aromatic pi system and subsequent cleavage. For example, Friedel-Crafts alkylation. So here the functionalization takes place by first electrophilic attack. In cross-coupling reaction, we need a substrate which is pre-functionalized. That means we need either halide, triplet, and boronate, which are reactive substrates, and we need to prepare them and then use for this transformation. And these reactions are performed in the presence of transition metal catalyst. Whereas in the case of CH bond activation, we can activate a particular CH bond present in the aromatic system or in the aliphatic system with the help of transition metal catalyst and functionalize that particular CH bond with the other reagent. So the difference between the functionalization, only CH bond functionalization and CH bond activation is the intermediate species formed in CH bond activation is the metal insertion between carbon and hydrogen, which breaks the CH bond and forms a reactive intermediate which then functionalize to get the desired molecule. I hope the difference between the three is clear in your mind now. If you look at the traditional reactions such as Friedel-Crafts reaction, wherein functionalization takes place to get the molecule of our choice. However, if there is substituent on the aromatic ring, then the control of regioselectivity is done by the substituent present on the aromatic ring. So if the electron rich substituent is present on the aromatic ring, we can expect ortho or para activation or functionalization to get the corresponding functionalized molecule. Or if the substrate contains electron withdrawing group, then we can expect the functionalization at meta position. So this way, in these reactions such as Friedel-Crafts reaction, the regioselectivity means the functionalization taking place at particular region, that means at particular place. For example, in the case of aromatic ring, ortho, meta, para functionalization. So in this type of reaction, we can control the regioselectivity by using the directing groups present in the ring, and finally we get the functionalized molecule. But let's consider CH activation and how we can achieve the regioselectivity. So in the case of CH activation, there are three ways. The first one is intrinsic regioselectivity. That means the molecule itself has some biasness towards the overall system, and some carbon hydrogen bonds are either weak, acidic, and which can react with the metal, and finally we get functionalization. and I have shown here indole, benzoxazole and thiopine substrate. So the other method is intramolecular. Why this CH activation becomes radioselective is because it has no choice but to react at this position, because this is in close proximity of the other side of the molecule. So this is controlled by the intramolecular nature of the reaction. However, scientists developed a method wherein directing group can be used to achieve radioselectivity. For example, in the aromatic system, if there is directing group which can bind with the metal, and then it comes in close proximity of one of the CH bond, and insertion takes place, and further the reactive intermediate reacts with the reagent and we get functionalization. So what are these directing groups? They are generally functional groups which contain heteroatoms which can easily bind with the metals. If we look at the history of CH activation, it started in the 1850s, wherein the metal like mercury was inserted between carbon and hydrogen. However, the functionalization was not demonstrated. But in 1955, Murashi group reported first CH activation reaction using cobalt catalyst, and they use simple substrate, that is imines, which can be prepared from simple aldehyde and amine, and this could be very easily converted to interesting scaffold thalidomide, which are uh, potential building blocks for many natural products or drugs. But you can see that they have used carbon monoxide or very high temperature. However, this was just the beginning of this area, and in 1969, Fujiwara's group reported palladium and copper catalyzed CH functionalization or CH activation, wherein we don't need really aromatic halide, and coupling can take place easily in the presence of catalytic amount of these metals. And we can see that by using simple commercially available substrate, we can achieve complex building blocks such as stilbene or thalidomide using CH activation. The process of this CH activation was very much appreciated by the organic chemists, and many researchers worked in this area, and in last 1 decade several publications and patents in this area shows the importance of CH activation. Nowadays copper, ruthenium, rhodium, palladium and iridium are the most commonly used metals. Since palladium is the most commonly used method, I have presented here a general mechanism, though we are not going to go into much details, but it follows either electrophilic aromatic substitution, can be presented as an electrophilic aromatic substitution, or concerted metallation or proton abstraction process. Whatever synthetic tool we develop in organic chemistry, or whatever synthetic methodology we develop in the organic chemistry, if it is not applicable in the synthesis of natural products or drugs or a molecule which can be used in advanced materials, then it has no use. Basically, it should be applicable in this construction of complex molecules or those small but desired molecules. So there are few reports wherein the CH activation process has been utilized in the synthesis of natural product. For example, I have here shown lithospermic acid. It could be synthesized starting from this imine, and you can see they have maintained this aldehyde as they need it for further functionalization, and the rhodium metal was used, rhodium catalyst was used for the as a catalyst in this transformation. and since they have used chiral ligand, they could also get chirality in the final product. So as you can see, this gives very efficient access to the complex natural product. Similarly, the CH activation synthetic tool is also used in the synthesis of drugs. For example, diclofenac, which is anti-inflammatory, and they have used simple phenylacetic acid as the substrate which is commercially available, and they have used palladium catalyst to do radioselective iodination. So you can see they have done CH activation using palladium as one of the key steps. So the utility of this CH activation has been demonstrated in the natural products as well as drugs. So if you look at the literature, you will find that tremendous catalytic CH activation process have been reported till date, and it has emerged as a powerful synthetic tool to form carbon-carbon and carboheteroatom bonds. However, the reports on natural product synthesis as well as drug synthesis are limited. However, the fascinating and efficient transformations using this CH activation protocol enhanced our interest in CH activation chemistry for the synthesis of important scaffolds, and we decided that we'll explore in this area. However, as we discussed previously, we need a directing group in the CH activation process. Whenever new synthetic tool or whenever there is advancement, it comes with some drawback or limitation. In the case of CH activation using directing groups, there are some limitations. Many directing groups are not easily removable. Additionally, we need two steps for installation and removal of directing group, which makes it step and atom economically unviable. And in the case of aromatic system, we can achieve ortho-CH activation with directing group, but if we want meta or para functionalization or CH activation, then we need a template which is bigger than the substrate itself. Hence, then it becomes unviable. So keeping all these limitations in mind, we decided to explore this area, and our plan was to develop inherent direct group directed CH activation protocol for the synthesis of new scaffolds and natural products as well as drugs. So what is inherent group directed CH activation? What it means is we will not install additional or directing group in the molecule, but we'll use the functional group present in the substrate itself as a directing group and do the CH activation followed by functionalization. So how we have done this, I will illustrate it by giving three different examples. The first example is CH activation on quinozolinone cysteine. We have chosen this scaffold because quinozolinones are present in several natural products as well as drugs. What we wanted to achieve and demonstrate here is we can do late stage functionalization via CH activation on the quinozolinone cysteine. So we decided to show that we can do arylation on this system regioselectively. First of all, whenever we think of any method or process, we have to optimize it by using different catalysts and reaction conditions. So for the arylation of quinozolinone cysteine, we tried different aryl halides and then diaryl aluminum salts. It worked with diaryl aluminum salts very efficiently and we could get good yield. Thus, the optimization was complete and it was now time to show generalization of this, which we did, and we could show that the reaction is very general and we could synthesize all these uh, products by CH activation, wherein the aryl group was introduced radioselectively at one. As you can see, we can also bring variety in the aryl group that we have introduced. So in conclusion, in the first example what we have demonstrated, we have shown that the quinozolinone itself can be used as inerent directing group, and we can utilize diaryl adenine triplets as the arylation source, and this method can be used for late stage derivatization of bioactive quinozolinones. The second example which we have, after successfully completing the CH activation methodology on quinozolinone system, we planned for the use of CH activation in the natural product synthesis, and for that purpose we selected isocryptoid lepine as the natural product, which shows very good antimalarial activity, and several of its derivatives are also antimalarial. And for synthesis of this natural product, as you know, we first design its retrosynthesis. So wherein we envision two key steps. One is CH activation and one is radical Beckmann rearrangement. So we started executing our plan, and we started with indole, and from indole we could prepare the compound number 5, which was then converted to the oxime using hydroxylamine, and this oxime is the substrate for Beckmann rearrangement. As you know, in Beckmann rearrangement, oxime is converted into amide. So generally H2SO4 and other harsh conditions are required for this transformation, but we developed ammonium persulfate and TMSO as the reagent for this transformation, and which works in under very milder condition to provide the compound number 3. Now the next target was to do CH activation. However, what we observed was that we get the CH activation of compound 3 between the phenyl ring of sulfonyl moiety and indole, which is not desired. So we observe the compound number 6 instead of the compound number 2. Accordingly, we had to change our plan, and we started with methoxymethyl protected compound 7 and followed the same sequence of reaction, and CH activation, which is directed by the amide group present in compound number 9, would give the compound number 10, which can be converted to isocryptolepine, which is reported in the literature, and we could also convert the compound number 10 to a known anti-cancer agent. Thus, we have successfully utilized Beckmann rearrangement as well as CH activation for the construction of interesting heterocyclic molecule, which is known for its antimalarial activity. And we could also synthesize one anti-cancer molecule. See, this CH activation can be used for indoloquinoline scaffold. The last example illustrated here is the use of CH activation protocol in the construction of protoberberine core. Protoberberine core is found in natural products as well as drugs, and it is known for several different biological activities. We designed its retrosynthetic plan, and as you can see, we were expecting CN bond formation and CC bond formation in a tandem fashion. And finally, the substrates from which we can start the synthesis should be simple amine and acid, benzoic acids. So we plan to synthesize the desired substrate 3A starting from simple amine 6A and acid 7B. So as you know, we can use coupling reagents for this amide formation. Herein we are used EDCI, which is similar to DCC, that is dicyclohexyl carbonamide. However, the purification is simpler in the case of EDCI, as we can simply do aqueous workup to remove the urea formed in the reaction. Once the compound, the amide 5 in hand, the next plan was to install iodine regioselectively and to obtain the compound 4A, which was done by using iodine and silver triplet. Then the alkene group was installed in the place of iodine to obtain the compound number 3A, which is the substrate to try our hypothesis of carboamidation CH activation protocol to construct the protoberberine class of natural products or drugs. With the desired substrate 3A in hand, we planned for the optimization of our CH activation protocol. For that purpose, we tried different palladium catalysts as well as copper catalyst and reaction conditions, solvents, temperature, and so on. And finally, we could optimize the condition wherein palladium catalyst was used and copper was used as a oxidant, and the reaction works smoothly to convert compound number 3A to compound number 2A and forms new carbon nitrogen and carbon carbon bond to achieve protoberberine class of scaffold. Once the optimized condition in hand, we prepared several different analogs of the substrate 3A, which can be converted to natural products or drugs. The substrate that we prepared, which are analogs of compound 3A, then they were subjected to the palladium catalyzed reaction condition to obtain the protoberberine class of natural products. As shown here, we could synthesize 4 different natural products containing this scaffold, and we could also synthesize one drug, that is tetrahydropalmitin, which is used to treat anxiety issues. So in conclusion, we have developed palladium catalyzed approach for the synthesis of protoberberine class of core for the first time, and in one step, single step, we could do CN and CC bond formation under mild reaction condition, and this short and efficient synthesis of these natural products and drugs paves a way for the further development of complex natural products. So I presented that CH activation has been evolving starting from 1955 to till date. Several advancements took place in this area, and I also presented that in our group we worked on this use of this useful synthetic tool for the construction of natural product or drug, and as well as bioactive molecule. But what is the way forward? So is it that the area ends here? No, the development keeps happening, and the further development in this area is traceless directing groups, which has been one of the interesting area. Then directing group free CH activation. Also the application of this drug, this method or synthetic tool in the drug synthesis, actual industrial scale synthesis is one of the important aim. And as you know, I told you that commonly used metals are palladium, iridium, rhodium, and so on. These are highly expensive, and now the main aim is to stop use of these metals, because as you know, palladium is now much expensive than the gold itself. Why? Because Most of the palladium which was present on the earth has been exhausted, and it is estimated that within next 5 to 10 years palladium will be extincted from this earth, mother earth. You might have heard this terminology extinction, which we use for animals, animal species or plant species. Similarly, some of these metals will vanish completely from the earth and will not be able to do reaction using palladium after few years. So what is the solution for this? So we should turn our attention towards the more cheaper and very commonly available transition metals for CH activation or on industrial scale. So overall, in my today's presentation, I presented the about CH activation area, how it evolved and what is it, and how it can be applied in the natural product synthesis with illustrative examples from my group. This work was done by my group members, Dr. Naneshwar Garg, who is currently a postdoctoral fellow in Ireland, Dr. Vivek Humne, uh, you know him very well. Currently, he is professor at your college, and he was there in my group for almost 1.5 years. First as a research associate, and later as a national postdoc fellow with the prestigious fellowship. Then Dr. Pankaj Mahajan, he is currently a postdoc in United States. So I thank all these three fellows who worked in my group and contributed actively to this area. Finally, thank you to all of you for listening to me carefully and paying attention. If you have any queries, please feel free to contact me via this email address, and you are welcome to visit NCL. Please be safe and take care of yourself. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir, for this very informative session. I invite Dr. A.G. Ulle, sir, for vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon to all of you. It's an immense pleasure to be here to deliver a vote of thanks on behalf of Sri R. R. Lavdi Science College, Morshi. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to President of Sri Shivaji Education Society, Amravati, Sri Harshavardhanji Deshmukh sir. I would like to say thanks to Dr. S.B. Maske sir for such a wonderful talk in this session. Sir, that you spotted in your lecture that the CC bond coupling and their importance in the natural product and drug synthesis. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I would like to say thanks to Principal of Sri R. R. Lavti Science College, Morshi, Dr. G. R. Tadas, sir. I would like to say thanks to coordinator and convener of this e-conference for managing such a wonderful e-conference. I would like to express my thanks to all staff members for their continuous and constant support to make this event as a successful event. Thank you. Thank you very much. At the last but not the least, I would like to express my thanks to all dear participants for their continuous presence and make this event as a huge success. Thank you. Thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.